Hey everyone, it's Hailey, and today I'm going to be doing a new kind of video, basically choosing what you guys, my subscribers, read next. I will have a bit of an explanation here, so if you just want to skip that and get into the video, I'll have a timestamp down below for you guys. But since this is a new video, I do want to take some time to talk about it just a little bit. I'm going to try and be quick about it. So I love doing If You Liked This, Then You Might Like This videos, which is basically where you're talking about comparable books. And that's a big thing in the publishing industry is comps. When you go to pitch a book, you want to have a comp for it. So it's not a negative thing that these books are alike, it's something that's going to sell it. And I do those videos and I pick the books. I just like have books that remind me of other ones. I actually will be doing one soon, but I thought it might be fun to ask what you guys were reading and then challenge myself to see if I could pick something for you to read next based on that. By the time you see this video, you for sure will probably be done with whatever you're reading, and you can obviously read whatever you want. I just thought it was like a fun way to kind of do a little twist on a typical challenge. It actually came out of the If You Liked This videos, and the video that I did, it was in like March or April. It was at the beginning of quarantine, and I did a video where I recommended books to you guys based on whatever like you were looking for. So that was kind of the marriage of these two ideas, and so this video is born. It's definitely one that I would want to do again. I also want to do the like just recommending books to you guys one again, because I think that was a lot of fun. I love recommending books. It's one of my favorite things. It's why I love working in a bookstore. But I consulted Instagram for this one, which I often do, so if you ever want to participate in these sorts of videos, that's usually the easiest place for me to ask you guys for prompts and stuff like that. So I have that link down below if you wanted to go and follow my Instagram. If you don't, that's fine too. It sounds like a self-promo, but like, I mean it is, but that's the easiest way for me to do challenge videos like this. However, if you did want to drop what you're reading right now down in the comments below, then maybe next time I will consult this, and it will be like months in the future because I don't want to do this video too many times. It will get repetitive, but I feel like since YouTube is my biggest audience, it makes sense to ask for those prompts here. So if you do want to leave your current read down below, then I will come back here next time I go to do this video if you want me to do it again. If you don't, then yeah. But I said I was gonna keep that short and I did not, so let's just get into it. This first one was really easy because I actually just finished reading this book, and that is Tweet Cute by Emma Lord. So it's kind of a situation where I read quite a few books in a row that have a similar concept, so it was pretty easy to pick for this one. So my main recommendation to read after Tweet Cute is Alex Approximately by Jen Bennett. These both have similar concepts in terms of the fact that it's like a You've Got Mail retelling, which I've never seen, but this one blatantly says it is, but this one has a similar sort of thing going on. So essentially, from my understanding, what that means is that it's like a situation where these two people are talking to each other online, but they don't know they're talking to each other. And in real life, they are building a relationship, but they actually like already have a relationship online. So that is definitely a driving force for both of these stories, but this one is like a surfing town. It deals with liking movies and stuff, and this one is a grilled cheese recipe that has been stolen, and it's a Twitter war too, so really interesting, but I think you would probably like both of these. Now, I also wanted to mention I Kissed Alice by Anna Birch, because that also has a situation where the one character is doing fan fiction with the other character, but in real life they're complete enemies. I personally DNF'd this book, but I did want to mention it because even though I didn't like it, I don't think it's a bad book by any means. I think it might be something that you might like. Next is The Library of the Unwritten by AJ Hackwith. So there are a couple of books on this list that I haven't read, and I'm also recommending a book that I haven't read. I know that's probably gonna bug some of you, but I will let you know if I haven't read either book for those. I just wanted to pop in and say that there literally is only two. All the rest of them I have read at least one of the books, okay? I promise. So please don't be mad. I'm kind of in that way going off of like when I worked in the bookstore, someone would be like, I just read this book. It's about this. Do you have anything like it? And then I would know of a book, but I haven't necessarily read either book. So I'm sorry, but but I wanted to include them still. So there's only a couple like this, but like I do know enough about the books that I feel like it's a good recommendation. I mean, you can tell me if it's not, but we have Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackwith, and I would say next you can try The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. So I did actually start this book, I just haven't gotten the chance to finish it yet because I ended up putting it down, but both of these deal with magical libraries. This one is kind of like whimsical underground library, and this one is a library in hell where there's a character that ends up escaping, searching for the author of his story because it's the wing of unwritten stories. They both seem super cool, and I think they definitely remind me of each other, which is why I wanted to mention it. I will also say that Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson might be a good one to go with. That is YA, so it's a pretty easy YA fantasy read, but it is a magical library once again. Also, Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I wasn't a huge fan of that one, but definitely has that magical, whimsical library element. Next is Prince Charming by Rachel Hawkins, and I usually from this one go to Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, which I do still totally recommend if you've read this book. I feel like you would really like it. That is an adult romance though, but I wanted to switch it up too since I do talk about that book and do that recommendation quite a bit. So I would recommend American Royals by Catherine McGee. My copy's downstairs. I'm not going to get it. There's like, the reason I don't go downstairs to get the books is because I have my armchair in the doorway, so then it won't be in frame and I can't get past it. It's just, I'm lazy and I don't want to climb over the chair or move it. But both of these stories deal with Americans in meeting royalty. American Royals is pretty different. This is a contemporary story about a girl who, her sister is marrying a prince, so she's kind of thrown into the world of royals unexpectedly. It's so fun, so cute. And American Royals, on the other hand, is an alternate sort of history. So instead of offering George Washington the presidency at the end of the Revolutionary War, he is offered a crown. So it is the monarchy that now rules the states. And this book is following the descendants. There's the princess who is in line to be the first queen. There's like a side princess sort of thing. There's a lot of royal drama going on in it, but I think that if you love the royalty aspect of Prince Charming, American Royals will definitely be one for you. Next is Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan, which I actually haven't read yet, but I have seen the movie. I do want to read it eventually. I just haven't gotten around to it, but I think that a book that would be great to go with next is Love Boat Taipei by Abigail Hing Wen. These both are stories that have an Asian culture at the forefront. This story is set in Taipei, and it deals with the main character discovering her identity as an Asian American, but it also has just like this really summer-long party with a lot of drama, which is why I think that it would be a great book to go with next. There's some family drama. It's mostly friend drama, but like there's romantic drama too, and I think that all that drama is what you get from Crazy Rich Asians, at least in the movie, that's what you got. So I know I committed like the cardinal sin of watching the movie before I read the book, but I didn't know when I would get to the book. So oopsies, but I think that this would be a good pick for your next read. Next is Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli, and I would recommend to pick up Felix Ever After by Kaysen Callender next. So I loved both of these books. They are both like personal favorites of mine, and they are pretty similar, but they're both unique in their own ways. So you deal in both of them with cyberbullying situations, specifically with an LGBTQ plus issue. In Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, someone is threatening to out Simon as gay, and in Felix Ever After, we have a situation where someone has exposed Felix's dead name and pictures of him before his transition. So definitely difficult topics to read, but both stories manage to be really fun at the same time while having a lot of emotion to them. They both have amazing friend groups and adorable romances in them, and the most lovable characters. Like, I love Felix and Simon so much, and they also both feature much needed representation. So definitely read this. Like, even if you haven't read this one, read either of them. Just, they're both so good. Next is The How and the Why by Cynthia Hand, and I feel like next you should try out Far from the Tree by Robin Benway. The How and the Why is on my TBR still. I'm super excited to read it, and I'm hoping I'll be able to get to it soon. I've heard it's very emotional, which is to be expected. Now, both of these stories deal with adoption. In this story, we have a character who is discovering her identity, and she has everything she wants wants in life, but she wants to get to know who her biological mother was, and it's told alternating between her learning more about who she is and where she comes from and letters from her biological mother. So I just know that's going to be a lot. And in this story, we have 3 kids who are siblings and all were adopted out, and they come to meet each other and try to find their biological mother. So definitely like kind of similar but unique in their own way. I loved Far From the Tree. I thought it was a great story about sibling relationships and kind of nature versus nurture, and I don't think it's a story that gets talked about enough. I personally super enjoyed it. Like, each kid is put in a different situation and you see how they come to grow up and as they meet each other very late in life, and I just think it's like a heightened emotional situation about family and the different kinds of family that there can be. And that's honestly why I want to read this book, is because I remember reading this one and liking it so much. While we're here, I feel like I should get this recommendation out of the way. So Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. I feel like next you should also go with Far From the Tree by Robin Benway. Once again, 2 books that I really loved, and the reason for this recommendation is because they both deal with siblings that didn't know that each other existed until later on in life. That's when they come to know each other. In Clap When You Land, these 2 sisters meet after the death of their father on a plane accident. So the one character is living in New York and didn't know that she has a sister in the Dominican Republic until their father dies, which is definitely very hard to deal with. And Far From the Tree, like I said, they come together to try and find their biological mothers. So both stories that deal with that like heartbreaking thing of discovering a sibling after and the complications of that relationship, and they're both really good. Next is By Your Side by Casey West, which I think that you should read Dash and Lily's Book of Dares by Rachel Cohn and David Levithan after reading that one. Now, the reason for this one is they are both bookish romances. Dash and Lily is set at Christmas, but while it has like the Christmassy feel, I feel like it kind of is a book that you could read whenever. I was super surprised by how much I enjoyed it, but it is a romance that starts in a bookstore with a book where there's a note in it, and that's how it all develops. And By Your Side is a romance that starts in a library with the 2 characters being locked in a library together. So definitely have those bookish romance vibes. I feel like I could probably do better for this one, honestly. I was trying to think of another bookish romance that I've read, but I couldn't think of any that I've really liked. Like Words in the Deep Blue, I think, is that by Kath Crowley? I can't remember, but I wasn't a huge fan of that book. It is another bookish romance though, so might be one that you would enjoy. Just because I didn't like it doesn't mean that you won't. Next is Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson, which I would recommend moving on to The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert next. This might seem like a weird one because it's a fantasy, this one's a mystery, but this is a mysterious fantasy, and for some reason I just feel like it fits. Maybe because they both deal with like this big estate. This is a boarding school that is in the mountains of Vermont, very reclusive, and it has a historical element because part of this murder mystery is in like the 1800s or something like that. I can't exactly remember, but then you also have modern day. Now in this one we have not really a murder mystery so much, but just a spooky kind of eerie mystery. I feel like both of these books just have a vibe to them, and that's why it works. Initially I was going to go with Stalking Jack the Ripper because that is a murder mystery, but I feel like this is more of a good pairing because I don't think romance is the main plot line in either of these. I mean, at least that's not what I cared for the most in either of them, so I feel like this one makes sense, at least to me. Next is The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon, which I would recommend moving on to The Time of Our Lives by Emily Wibberley and Austin Sigmund Broca. I always used to say Siegmund or how did I say it? I can't even think of how I said it, but I was saying it wrong, I realized once I listened to the audiobook for Time of Our Lives. The reason for this recommendation is definitely the characters. Both of these stories deal with opposites in a romance, and I didn't love the romance in Time of Our Lives personally. I love the romance in this one, but they're kind of realistic romances that also have a time period set on them. This is set over the course of 72 hours or something like that, while the main character is in danger of being deported because it's been discovered that she has immigrated illegally. So it's a very heartbreaking story in that way. And The Time of Our Lives is set while the characters are on college tours, and they meet for the first time then, and they don't really know each other that well, but they strike up a relationship really quickly. And both of the characters in each of these, you kind of have an optimist and a pessimist, and characters that have very conflicting, I don't want to say conflicting values, but outlooks on life in general. And it's a product of their upbringing and how their lives have been playing out, I guess. I don't even know what I'm trying to say right now. Essentially, in here, you have a character who sees the logic in the world, and then you have a character who is a dreamer. And in Time of Our Lives, you have a character who has kind of set limits for himself and a character who doesn't understand that and wants to live beyond her limits. So I think that opposites attract sort of romance definitely fuels both of these stories, and I did enjoy both of them. They're definitely very unique for YA contemporaries. Next is My Favorite Half Night Stand by Christina Lauren, which I would recommend trying The Right Swipe by Alicia Ray next. These are both social media based romances. So My Favorite Half Night Stand is a story where a bunch of friends make this pact and they make dating profiles, and the two best friends, kind of like Alex Approximately and all that, they end up starting a relationship on that app, but they don't know that they're talking to each other. But social media is definitely the main fueler of that romance, and here we have the actual creator of a dating app, which is super cool. This is a very feminist romance, and you have the creator of an app who is trying to incorporate, I don't think that's the right word, but she's trying to get another app and like buy it out. I can't think of the specific word right now. I know there's a word for it. Oh, that's gonna bug me. Anyways, the social media side of dating and dating apps are at the forefront of both of these stories. Personally, fun anecdote for you guys, I met my boyfriend online, but he was literally the only person I talked to because dating apps terrify me because I don't trust anyone. But that's just a little aside. Read these books. Anyways, next is Daughter of the Burning City by Amanda Foody. I don't talk about this book as much. Like, I feel like I used to talk about it quite a bit when I first read it, but really liked this story. And I generally from this one go to Caraval by Stephanie Garber, which I do still recommend. They're circus-y stories where you don't really know what's real and what's fake. This is actually another murder mystery, so maybe one for Truly Devious as well. However, this time I decided to go with a book that I just started listening to, and that is Ironcast by Destiny Saraya. This deals with illusions, but they're being used to con people. It's really cool, set in the 1919, but I was going to say 1920s because Prohibition is just coming about at this era. This one super is giving me Diviners vibes, but I do think that illusion and sort of magical element is pretty similar to Daughter of the Burning City. Next is Maybe This Time by Casey West, which I actually also just finished recently, and I would recommend trying out This Time Will Be Different by Misa Sugera next. The absolute main reason for this is because both of these stories deal with flowers and florists. They're both like central to the topic. In this story, it is more so, it's the family florist shop. She just happens to be, Sophie in this book, happens to be working for a florist, but flowers definitely are main topics in both of these. I did enjoy this one more. It's way more impactful. It deals with race issues, and that is one of the main topics of it. It was very eye-opening and educational for me, and this one is more of just like a cute, fluffy romance, but you do still get a little bit of romance here and some cuteness to it as well. Next is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green, which I would recommend trying out Under Rose-Tainted Skies by Louise Gournall next. I can't remember if I've made this comparison before. I'm sure that I have, but these books both have mental health at the forefront and characters that are suffering from extreme mental health issues, so definitely be wary of triggers in that regard. However, I think they both deal with it very, very well, and I liked both of them. I don't really have too much else to say about that comparison, so that was a quick one, but I did want to mention it. Next is Save the Date by Morgan Matson. I would say that next you should read 10 Blind Dates by Ashley Poston. Now, this is once again a YA contemporary to a YA Christmassy contemporary comparison. However, 10 Blind Dates is definitely a book that you can read whenever. It just so happens to be set over Christmas break. And I feel like these books both have family at the forefront. You have more of the just like one family unit, the, what is it called? Immediate family? I don't know why I'm blanking so much, but in Save the Date, whereas in 10 Blind Dates, you have the entire extended family, which is a lot of fun. In Save the Date, it is set over a week or so as well, so the time period's kind of similar too, but it is the oldest sister is getting married. The family is famous because they have this comic that their mother has written, and it's just that family relationship is definitely definitely at the forefront of this story. In 10 Blind Dates, it's super fun because the main character's boyfriend breaks up with her unexpectedly right before Christmas break, which isn't the fun part, but she goes to her grandmother's house and all her aunts and cousins and all of that are there, and they decide to set her up on 10 blind dates over the course of Christmas break. Like, some of them she's in a nativity, like, it's just wild stuff, and it is so much fun, and her family is central to that, so I feel like it's a natural progression from this book to that one. Next is The Girl in the Blue Coat by Monica Hesse, which I love. I'm so happy that someone's reading this, but I would say to try out The Fountains of Silence by Ruta Sepetys. Now, here we have more of a mystery plotline, but it's set during World War II in Amsterdam, and one of the main character's neighbors was hiding a Jewish girl, and that girl has gone missing, so her neighbor hires her to find out what has happened to her. And over the course of this story, you're discovering what is happening in Amsterdam under Nazi occupation during World War II. So really a difficult story. Now, with this one, it's also a difficult story. It's not so much a mystery, but it is a story where you're questioning what's happening the entire time. So this is set in the 50s, and it is set in Spain, and it follows an American boy, but also a Spanish girl, and it is exposing life under fascist dictatorship in Spain, which is obviously really difficult. Both of these stories also have photography in them, and that's kind of an interesting thing that I just thought of, so I wanted to mention, but I think that they are both historical fictions that I loved a lot, and I learned a lot about each situation and each place. Like, I feel like the setting of each of these stories really drives the story forward, which is interesting for historical fiction. I mean, I feel like that does happen fairly often, but especially in these books, so I liked them both a lot. Next is We Used to Be Friends by Amy Spalding, and I haven't read this book yet, nor have I read the one that I'm going to recommend, although there is another one that I'm going to talk about that I have read. However, this comparison had to be made because they deal with the same topic, and it's a topic that I think needs to be discussed more in YA fiction because it's something that everyone deals with, and that is the loss of a friend. So what I recommend to read next is When You Were Everything by Ashley Woodfolk. Central to both of these stories is the loss of a friendship, a best friend breakup. And that's such a difficult thing to deal with because sometimes you just drift apart and you don't come together again. And sometimes there is reasoning behind it and it just doesn't work out anymore, but it's just like a relationship breakup. It's something that isn't easy to deal with. Now, I would also recommend Since You've Been Gone by Morgan Matson because this deals not so much with a friendship breakup, but learning to live without a friend that you have lived with forever and you have really hidden in their shadow. So it's about the main character completing a bucket list that her best friend left behind for her to break out of her shell without her there anymore. I think central to all of these books is that difference in friendship and how that loss can be. And I want to read all of them. I mean, I've read Since You've Been Gone, but I really want to read this one, and I want to get my hands on We Used to Be Friends because I love that topic. I mean, I hate it, but I think it's so important. And finally is another book that I've read recently, which is Beach Read by Emily Henry. This is definitely another kind of literary romance. However, with this one, we're dealing more so with the composition of books. So it's about writing and writers who decide to switch what they're writing and they fall in love and stuff. It's really cute. So I have another kind of three-way recommendation here. So I would recommend trying out Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren next, because this is definitely a book lover's romance. Books are at the center of it. That's how the characters bonded. You also have a second chance romance here. That's like the main thing here, but it's kind of like a low-key trope in this one. However, that is something that I love, so I wanted to mention it. But I have another book by Christina Lauren that I would also recommend. So they also have written autobiography, which I don't know where my copy is, but I definitely need to find it. That's more of a writer's romance because it is set with a writer's class, a creative writing class, where over the course of this course, they have to write a novel. So novel writing and just writer's craft in general is central to that, but you also have a romance blossoming between these two boys, and it definitely is more of an intense read because there is, I mean, this is also a really intense and emotional read, but there's some religious issues that come into the plot line in autobiography, and it's a heartbreaking read, but both of these were really, really good. So those are all of my recommendations for what you should read next based on what you're reading now. I hope you guys liked this. I hope it gave you some ideas for what to read next next, or some more, like if you liked this, then you'll like this or whatever. But yeah, I had fun doing it. I hope that you guys had fun watching it. I would definitely like to do more of these videos in the future, so if that's something that you would be interested in, please do let me know, and I will see you guys in another video soon. Bye!